Hello, 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 folks. Welcome back to Holding Space. Melinda Zapone, if you're on Substack. And Enya, everyone needs you always to do the inner work and relate responsibly if you're on Spotify or YouTube. And as we all pretty much know here on the East Coast, we are stuck indoors. It's bitter cold, but it is perfect time to warm up from the inside through self-understanding. And what we're talking about today is, did I really choose this life? Lessons on loving what is. I've definitely learned at 45 we won't see the big picture. It's narrow for a long time. It's a skill to see inward and make sense of some design that you executed. If you learn to love this, it'll be your best business endeavor. And that's what I've kind of realized. I've been a therapist for a long time, trying to encourage myself to think of myself like my own business, not because I want to use people to make money, but because I want to develop myself like a structure of helping that last longer than I do. So that's my attempt with creating these materials. And over years of holding space in therapeutic conversations, I've tried to create something different, something more than just talking. The same intention lives in my writing voice. Whether I'm offering healing space or healing words, it's always an invitation to listen and see inward differently than we have been taught. My hope is always that it is an invitation to reverse the tendency to think, analyze, or problem solve our lives, and to sense into a truth about something that shifts and brings valuable insight. So, in a truly, I guess, therapeutic conversation, we listen for what is not said. I've heard the stories of people's lives as they start out explaining the details of loss, breakups, family dysfunction, betrayal, toxic workplace dynamics, troubled choices, and recovered memory. But I've also learned to listen to the life in front of me in other ways, noticing movement, breath, and posture begin to read like a parallel text, like another story unfolding beneath the words. What I listen to could be the absence of breath as words spill rapidly. It could be the eye contact that disappears the moment awareness breaks through, or the eyes that water but never release tears. These moments quietly question something deeper. Why is life going the way it is? Why has it gone the way it has? Where is my life heading? Beneath many searches for meaning, there is often an unspoken question. Am I really the one responsible for all of this? At some point, we all have to accept a difficult truth. Our lives were built on choices made within circumstances we did not choose. No one can change the conditions of their birth. And yet, I have facilitated profoundly eye-opening timeline work where people come to recognize the situation they were entering pre-birth, how they sensed it, adapted to it, and were shaped by it long before they could understand it consciously. We do not choose this life. We are born into it. And then we begin making choices inside it. Awareness of choice comes slowly through mistakes, pain, regret, and eventually through learning that intuition can be trusted. If you are here, you know this writing by now. It carries the tone of a healing journey guided by an approach I coined the toolbox approach. And I registered, trademarked that puppy, but it doesn't mean I invented healing. Healing itself is not a new invention, but after more than 35 years inside my own healing journey and becoming a trauma therapist licensed to walk alongside others, I've learned that organization matters. Healing requires structure that does not override humanity. That is what this approach offers, tools for each phase of an organized, trauma-informed healing journey. We all live as managers of our own lives, trying to get it right. This doesn't stop when things become internally messy or fragmented, when patterns surface, when old choices come into view, when time past and time remaining both begin to speak. Somewhere inside, we know we haven't gotten it all right. There is a call to look. But we will only answer that call if we believe there are tools inside our toolbox to face what we find. The manager part of us wants coherence. It wants things to make sense, so we can do the work and move forward. A healing journey cannot appeal only to that part. True healing requires vulnerability. It asks us to face fear, repression, and long suppressed emotion. It demands that the body stay present and aware, no longer subdued or dissociated. The phases of healing within the toolbox approach, the narrative healing phase, reprocessing healing phase, and relational healing phase, are designed to speak to that inner manager who must decide to begin and then decide again and again to continue. They offer enough structure to make healing possible, even enough depth to make it real. And I've included a link to a powerful narrative healing reading introduction, You Are Not Broken, in the show notes. So take a look at that. You can also find it on Amazon. But we're going to talk and move into learning from what you didn't get. Silence is a great teacher, although not always a kind one. Many of you reading, listening, or watching will recognize the silence I mean. The way certain things were never spoken of in your family, the questions you had, the feelings you sensed, the stories you wanted explained but that no one discussed openly. Many families do not hold real conversations with children, and those children often become adults who struggle to co-create them with others. What we are left with instead is sensory memory, fragments of conversation, repeated stories told at holidays and gatherings, tones of voice, facial expressions, and the atmosphere of rooms. Alongside this, we carry our own thoughts, weaving these fragments together into the best story we could form about what we were growing up inside of, around, and often for. In many ways, we make it up as we go. We have to decide what the real story is and live as if it's true. But the story is often built on partial information, maybe 50% accuracy at best. In a healing journey, the work is not just to refine what we think we know, but to learn from the missing 50%. Healing requires integrating the half-truths that shaped our ego and personality with a fuller, more compassionate understanding, one that includes healing narrative, reprocessed memory, and relational authenticity with ourselves and others. The missing pieces are not gone. They exist within a deeper classroom of self, one that teaches not who or how to be now, but how the present moment is always informed by what came before. True presence would be body, breath, and sensation with no story at all. A silence that allows this kind of presence is profoundly healing. It's very different from the silence most of us were raised in. The silence that withholds story, feeling, and memory is often framed as love. In many families, protection through silence is how love is expressed. There is an unspoken agreement to keep the story the same for everyone, even when it isn't. This loyalty can quietly suppress reflection, questioning, self-inquiry, and intuition, because to question would mean standing apart, alone, and at risk of disconnection. Within the toolbox approach, we view these missed conversations as invitations. They point us toward the tools needed for a healing journey, tools that are introduced and practiced in phases. In the narrative healing phase, we learn to gently challenge and expand the story we've been living inside. In the reprocessing healing phase, we revisit and re-image memory, allowing for the depth of processing that was not available the first time. And in the relational healing phase, we practice both detachment and reattachment to self and to others in ways that repair connection injury and restore authenticity. What you didn't get still has something to teach you. Healing is learning how to listen, this time with tools, safety, and choice. So I'm going to give you a little grandma making pasta taught me this story. When I was a child, I learned how to hold a conversation by holding silence in my body so completely that no one noticed I was there. I learned how to listen without being addressed, how to watch without interrupting. Now I interpret a lot. I didn't know then that this form of listening would one day shape my work, only that it was safer and more informative than asking questions. You couldn't sit with my grandmother and talk about life. She wasn't that kind of woman. She was hunched over her food preparations, moving around on top of twisted toes inside her house shoes, or knitting. So instead, I watched her make pasta. I watched her take the brittle rads of uncooked spaghetti from a container made just for it, tall, tin, and deliberate, as if the shape itself announced importance. Even as a child, I understood what pasta meant in this family. It wasn't just food, it was love, it was structure. It was what everyone waited for. Antipasti came first, but only as a formality, not really a course at all. Pasta was the center. That was something I learned without anyone ever saying it. Then she did something that shocked me. She broke it. The water was already boiling, salted just enough, and she snapped the long, elegant strands clean in half and dropped them into the pot. No hesitation, no ceremony, just break and in. She walked away as if nothing had happened, while I stood there holding my breath. She moved between counters, tending to other things, returning now and then to check the pot. Eventually, she pulled out a single strand and threw it against the wall. Another jolt. The important pasta flung without reverence. When it stuck, she peeled it off, tasted it, and only then brought the pot to the sink. Steam rose as the water drained away, and what had been rigid and fragile began to look like a meal. Sometimes the sauce took all day. Red, white, occasionally something fishy that lingered in the house. The pasta always made room for whatever it was going to meet. What I learned, though, not for many years, was that pasta only became pasta by being broken first, by being plunged into heat and salted after the break, by being thrown against a wall and tested for readiness, by being strained, handled, combined, and finally served. I watched this ritual over and over in silence. I wondered if my grandmother chose to make so much pasta, or if it simply became what she did, what she was known for, over time. I didn't yet have the language for what I was witnessing. It took me a long time to understand that I was learning how transformation happens, quietly, without explanation, through process rather than instruction, through watching what survives being broken, heated, tested, and still offered as nourishment. What I learned is that what is kept in a special container becomes more special through breaking. Broken into, plunged into boiling water, salted directly into the fracture. It softens there, but not without being tested. It must then be thrown against something hard. It has to stick to what it's thrown at, proving it's ready, before being peeled away and strained and emptied of excess moisture while somehow remaining tender. Only then does it become what it was meant to be, something to share, something offered like love silently. No conversation required, everyone simply knows. As a child, my stomach often hurt as I tried to eat like the grown-ups, struggling to digest gluten, and yet, alongside the discomfort, I learned something else from pasta's quiet story. A longing lesson, one that didn't speak in words. My grandmother didn't make pasta for 101 years because she consciously chose it every time. Or maybe she did. More likely, it became what she did and who she was through repetition, necessity, and tradition. Something awakes to the choice. Sometimes not. That too is a lesson. Choice makes sense when we look closely, when we listen differently. That is the message I hold for myself and for readers, listeners, and viewers of the Toolbox Approach. Meaning is often not found in what is explained, but in what is witnessed. Healing begins when we learn to pay attention to the process, not just the outcome. So, how do we get from story to tool? How do we begin the work of inquiry? Well, true to my work, the toolbox approach always includes a reveal of the tools themselves. Healing is not meant to remain abstract or inspirational alone. It must eventually become something you can actually do, something you can return to when you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure how you arrived where you are. One of the most important tools in this approach blends narrative healing with reprocessing. It comes from self-inquiry modalities and therapy that help you see how the thoughts you hold, often unconsciously, are actively creating the very blocks you are trying to move past. These are not casual thoughts. They are organizing beliefs Many of them follow a familiar structure. Something like, you will be safe when you fill in the blank, but you can't because fill in the blank. And because of that, you can't move forward unless fill in the blank. These are very familiar structures. This kind of thinking feels protective, even logical, but it quietly creates a closed loop and behavior that leads nowhere except back to the same conclusion again and again. Over time, this loop begins to feel like fate, personality, or just the way life is. So we're going to take an example, and I want you to listen or feel for the closed sense of this person's mind. I will be safe when I am successful and respected in a loving relationship, but I can't because I keep attracting the wrong type. And because of that, I can't move forward unless I really know I am in something respectful and supportive, and that never happens. Now, inquiry slows this process down. The listening here is that the emotional safety equals both respect and love, and that a loving relationship is sought, not just attraction to a type, as that type may be wrong for them. However, this person is not listening to themselves. They are not noticing the strength of what they have learned about the loving relationship they seek. Self-inquiry here might just ask, how am I not in loving relationship with myself right now? So, getting a taste here now of what self-inquiry could be like, not just thinking, but asking through the thinking for a noticing. Some forms of inquiry invite you to take a thought you believe to be true, something you might even call realistic, and examine it carefully. For example, I don't think I will ever be truly loved. Instead of debating this thought or trying to replace it with a more positive one, the work asks you to sit with it, to take it line by line. This means when you start to prove it true in your mind, or if you were to write it all down, there are lines of proof. In our minds, one thought, if not met with inquiry, likes to prove itself true repeatedly with all the ways this is the truth. Taking this line by line to see if it can be proven 100% true in all situations at all times is a healthy confrontation. To notice where it cannot be known for certain, to imagine who you would be and how you might move without the thought operating as fact, is a lifting of a veil to what needs looking at. So let's take a look. I don't think I will ever truly be loved. My kids need me, rely on me for everything, but that is dependence. No one ever asked me how I'm doing with my life, what my day was like, how I feel at bedtime. Loving is putting yourself second.
Melinda, here is your reminder.
We'll just have to
Finish
take a pause for
taxes.
Alexa. Alexa, stop. I apparently have to do my taxes, but right now I'm doing inner work with all of you. Again, I'll list the example just in case we missed it. I don't think I will ever be truly loved. My kids need me, rely on me for everything, but that is dependence. No one ever asked me how I'm doing with my life, what my day was like, how I feel at bedtime. Loving is putting yourself second. Now, again, as a reader, viewer, or listener, you can probably hear it. Somehow you're doing the deeper listening right now that you don't give yourself. It is stressful to believe this truth. No one puts me before themselves, so I am not truly loved. If we could see this in ourselves, it would be influential. You are also invited to notice something subtle but powerful. There is no stress-free way to keep believing a painful thought. The suffering is not a personal failure, it's a clue. The turning point in self-inquiry and in listening to what is not said comes in the, I guess it's like a turnaround, which is why we call it turning point. The thought is gently turned around, not as denial, but as direction. For this person in the example, we hear it, we feel it. What if we could help them turn it around from, I don't think I will ever truly be loved, to, I know I am not truly loving myself? This is not meant as self-blame, it is meant as orientation. It shows you where your energy, attention, and healing might actually belong. This is where the question begins to shift. Instead of asking, why am I stuck here? We begin asking, what have I been believing that made this the only place I could land? Instead of, did I choose this life? We ask what choices became invisible once certain beliefs felt unquestionable. Today is your beginning in blending methods, narrative awareness, inquiry, and reprocessing, so that this question can be explored safely, slowly, and with compassion. This question: did I really choose where I am right now in life? This is not to arrive at a yes or no, but to discover what became shaped, constrained, or decided long before the choice felt available. This is not about undoing your life. It is about understanding it so that future choices can be made with more freedom, honesty, and self-trust. This is the beginning of the work. I want you to do this work without pushing. This work is not about digging, forcing insight, or breaking yourself open. If your body feels overwhelmed, confused, or numb, just pause. That's information, not failure. If you feel the urge to figure it out, remind yourself clarity comes after safety, not before it. You're always allowed to stop mid-exercise and return later. Healing unfolds through pacing, not pressure. You are not required to remember everything that you process. You are not required to understand everything. You're only asked to notice. So let's start this guided inquiry exercise. Beginning the question, did I really choose where I am? And the purpose of this is not about arriving at an answer. It's about noticing how your current life began to take shape through beliefs, adaptations, and circumstances that may not have felt like choices at the time. If you've been following my writing, you will know that helping is not a calling. It was a reaction, protection, and only became my calling when I asked myself why I had no rescuer, no helper, no support of my own. It's still a confronting question whenever I feel alone, afraid, small, failed, and insecure about my worth and purpose. I earn some compensation for helping, but I still struggle to use that income to support my path and purpose. I know now when I'm struggling, in some way I've chosen it. It's confronting, but there is no meaning in life greater than to see nothing in your way but your own thinking. Despite set paths based on our birthing circumstances, there is only this truth. When you struggle, your mind is in your way. You'll want to set this up with breath or find a quiet place. Sit in a way that allows your body to feel supported. Let your breath settle naturally. You're not trying to calm yourself, you're simply arriving. With breath in through the nostrils, with a closed mouth, we enact a boundary between us and all else. Then, when you exhale the same out through the nostrils, only your stale energy is expelled. Anything else is outside of your control. And now we begin. So, step one is name where you are. Complete the sentence simply and honestly without explanation. Right now in my life, I am here. Right now in my life, I am here. And fill in the blank. As an example, for those of you that benefit from this kind of thing, someone might say, right now in my life, I'm in a funk and feel like I've failed despite a decent life on paper. I'm angry at my family and unfulfilled by work. Write what comes down, keep it factual, not interpretive. Right? All those truthful thoughts that you have, those factual thoughts. And then step two is to introduce the question. Now write the question slowly or think this through slowly. Did I really choose to be here? Don't answer yet. Just notice what happens in your body when you hear the question, see the question on the page. You might grimace or tighten or notice hunger, a yawn, or a deflation. Notice what comes up sensory-wise, not in your mind. Step three is for your mind, listening for the first thought. Write down the first thought that appears before reasoning, defending, or correcting. And examples, they might sound like, I didn't have a choice, I chose it, but I didn't know better, I had to. This thought is not a conclusion, it's a starting point. I'm actually going to ask you to stop there for today. Let the work weave into your process. Wash hands, drive a car, make a meal, type an email. The work has begun in you, even when you are not trying for it to be worked on. Just trust. What I like to say in parting and just bringing it all together is why to consider a 3-day healing intensive what I'm starting to offer. When patterns have guided our lives for years, it can feel overwhelming to imagine where to even begin. Healing can seem abstract, scattered, or endless, but when healing is organized into phases, when you can see where you are, why you're there, and what tools belong to that stage, everything becomes within your capacity to learn, exercise, and practice. This is exactly what the 3-day healing intensive is designed to offer: clarity, containment, and a structured path forward. So, over the course of 3 days, you move through the phases of narrative healing, reprocessing healing, and relational healing with depth, direction, and personal guidance. The intensive does not replace long term healing. It helps your nervous system know inner work is within your capacity. Therapy intensives accelerate understanding, clarify direction, and organize the work ahead so you're no longer wandering, self blaming, or trying to heal yourself with guesswork. You'll receive personal support through 2.5 hours of coursework each day to understand the phases and your patterns, 1.5 hours of therapy each day to apply the tools to your personal story, 1 hour of coaching each day to integrate healing into relationships, career, health, and everyday life. And when we get a full membership, there's going to be a bonus half-day group session for reflection, shared wisdom, and expanded insight per your free decision after 3 days is completed. The structure of the intensives allows you to see your healing in a way that makes sense. You leave not fixed, but informed, grounded, and empowered. You leave with a plan, a direction, and tools you understand, not tools that overwhelm you, but tools that feel like your own. Most importantly, you leave with a sense that healing is not something you have to earn, perfect, or chase, but it's something you are allowed to organize, inhabit, and grow into. This is the purpose of the toolbox approach. This is the intention of the 3-day healing intensive. So I include a link to arrange your discovery call, which is totally free. And the setup ensures that the insurance covered portions that follow the intensive, at least 2 sessions post the experience, are covered. So please have your information handy as you set up your discovery call. Again, it's free of charge, but we do ask that you have your insurance ready so you already know you have appropriate support for the full program. If you want to send a direct message to arrange a call in a different way, please let me know your circumstances and we can see if we can arrange something. So the message option is right there in Substack. And you can link over it through YouTube and Spotify. Other stuff, there's also just a free poll on in healing intensives that really helps promote the cause and helps spread the invitation to heal. So you can just explore a less intensive option at the polling site if that appeals to you. Take the free poll and just contribute to this concept of democratizing mental health and organizing the healing journey. If this call doesn't call to you yet, your voice still matters to me. So your healing matters to me. I just want to hear you. I want to serve your journey and clear that path. Your answers are just vital to the cause. Thank you, everybody. Stay warm. Heal on.